UFC 293 finally got its main event with Israel Adesanya slated to defend his middleweight title versus Sean Strickland. So what's your level of interest from 1 to 10, fellas? That's the question. Now, I want to also give you some follow-ups to think about as we got closer to September 9th, because this just happened, right, a few days ago. And we were not having a main event. Did shelving meant Adesanya versus DDP, did that become a strong and wise possibility in your opinion? What are your thoughts here? Dan, you lead off.
As far as did it become a strong, a leader for that fight, yeah, I think we talked about this last time, and it got me a lot of love and attention, by the way, in the comments. A lot of upset DDP fans. I thought it was a real possibility, and if anything, I thought again, speaking of overachieving, we're talking about O'Malley perhaps overachieving. Dreykus did as well. Did not overachieve in that department, and kind of agreeing with Nolan in the previous segment, and kind of borrowing from that point, right? Because albeit not as strongly, clearly, I think you can still kind of apply that UFC math here as far as the next up. Now, with the O'Malley case, you could have argued that was normal practice in any era. In this era, I think especially, not that I agree with it, not that you should agree with it, folks, but in this era, we should especially not be surprised by decisions like this, because even when we can accuse and throw rocks at the UFC for going, oh, you're just going with the marketable guy in O'Malley, sometimes in this case, we'll see they will not go with a marketable fight, because now the schedule, that relentless UFC schedule that never stops, feel like Andy Dufresne in the hole over here, that is the number one priority. It's clear. We know what their priority. It's bottom lines, budgets, and schedule.
Yeah, I had just wondered if, I really was thinking, guys, they could just turn this into a fight night, go with, the local talent, New Zealand, Australia. Obviously, they have some very talented fighters. Maybe make the Kai Car France Van Cop fight the main event, and then just, scrap it. But I guess they've also set 294 in motion, 295. So who knows? Now, Strickland brings a pretty big game. And here's some thoughts from Adesanya that he put out, and then we'll go to the guys to finish out. Adesanya, quote, said, I never underestimate anyone. I was even thinking about Bisping versus Rockhold when Bisping finally beat him on 2 weeks' notice. He goes in there and shocks the world. That's a possible reality. My job is to make sure it's not in this reality. That's another parallel universe, another timeline. So, Izzy Styles is definitely taking him serious. How about you guys? How do you feel about all this? The announcement, the booking, Izzy's quotes.
Well, I guess, look, you wanted a 1 to 10. I'll be honest with you. Right about now, it's about 7.5, okay? It has that little bit of a letdown because I think we all wanted it to be Dreykus, right? Didn't happen. But this fight's going to grow on us, and I feel like come fight night, it's going to be up at the 8.5 range. And it's for a few reasons, right? Like, look, number one, Izzy's earned our respect, right? Has he not? He just, when he fights, it's must-watch TV. He has done that. He has made that situation for us. So you got to give him props there. Sean Strickland, he's got zero filter. You know he's going to open his mouth. You know he's going to get under Izzy's skin. He's already doing it, and he hasn't even opened his mouth yet. So that's another reason. And then Israel Adesanya just kind of said it there with that Luke Rockhold quote. He's not invincible. This could happen. It's happened to other people in this situation. It's happened to him before. So I think all that together is enough for us to kind of be excited to watch this. Like, you get a guy like Sean Strickland, whether you believe he deserves to be there or not, the dude always comes in shape. He has cardio for days. He fights 205ers. He doesn't back down. He's going to give you an honest fight. And you get that at Israel Adesanya every time. So I think, look, when you think about Dricus du Plessis, yes, okay, he's not there. But you know what? I don't think that fight's ever going to be lost. I think it has zero to do with wins and losses. It really just comes down to settling a beef. It's kind of like that high school fight where you can't wait till last period's over because two guys are just going to show up and settle a score. That's what we're going to have with those guys. So I feel like it's going to happen regardless. But with Strickland Adesanya, I'm getting there, man. It's kind of a weird fight, but I think come fight night, I'll be pumped up.
Hell yeah. I remember them high school fights.
They're the best.
Back in the day, right across the street behind Jack in the Box. It was on, man. As soon as sixth period was over. Oh, I love high school. Best 5 years of my life. All right, Nolan King, how about you, man? What are your thoughts here on this announcement, the fight itself? Give me a 1 to 10.
My 1 to 10 right now is probably at like a 4, to be honest with you. And honestly, in terms of, like Dan touched on a minute ago, the UFC schedule makes things, sometimes they just need to fill slots, right? This one for me, I understand, like, having a champion that is local, you want to have them headline this show, right? So as much as I'm not excited for the matchup itself, I also think, like, with Dricus out of the picture, this was the right call. So maybe I'll get a little bit more excited as we get closer to the fight. Maybe I'll talk myself into it. Maybe some of the buildup between the fighters, besides what I heard somebody reference, will likely be similar to a Call of Duty lobby. I think for me, that who knows what's going to happen with that trash talk. I don't even want to go in that direction. But in terms of the fight itself, Sean Strickland, we've seen him lose before. We've seen him eke out close decisions. His last fight, he looked great. But I still think, even though some people are treating him like he's an absolute bum in the fighting department when they talk about this matchup, I still think that Izzy's just such a step up from him at this point. Who knows? This is MMA. We've seen crazier things happen for sure. Maybe Sean's really putting it all together and coming into his own. Maybe he learned a lot from fighting Alex Pereira in terms of what not to do. But I think, in any universe as of right now, Israel Adesanya should be, a pretty moderate to heavy favorite against Sean Strickland.
Yeah, and I'm glad Mike was showing the B-roll of that dais at UFC 276 last year, because I think if Strickland has that opportunity to do what he did then, I mean, he was in Adesanya's head that day, and he was fighting for Hayda. Adesanya had Cannonier, but you could just tell Adesanya's like, where's this coming from, Yeah, there you go, right there. But, I mean, something like that, man, I'm telling you, there can be a last-minute buildup, so that by the time these guys fight, we're all ears. We're all in. Right now, I didn't hear any 9s or 10s, but I think we can maybe get there. And I think a lot of it has to do with Sean Strickland's ability on fight week, to just engage and build things up. Sometimes crossing the line, yes, I get it, but this is the fight game. And this is MMA. Things like that happen. Things like that go down.
I do love what you said earlier. I love that, hearing what you just mentioned about Izzy taking this seriously. It's very easy, I think, in MMA from when Conor McGregor would go out there and say, they'd give him everybody in the top 10, and he'd say, this guy sucks, that guy sucks, this guy's wrestling, this guy, is a bum, all this stuff. And it's like, it's cool to a certain degree to just try to put yourself on that level where you're so much better than everyone. But at the same time, I think, does it really help your brand too if you're saying that all the people that you are fighting suck? So I think it's good promotion for Izzy to say, hey, this is a serious fight. You guys might not think it is, but I do. I think that kind of legitimizes it in people's heads, and also for himself, man. To not be the Michael Luke Rockhold on the side of the Michael Bisping equation. So good championship mindset from him. He's come a long way, man. I really appreciate him as a champ at this point.
Hey guys, but look, all of the smack talk, all that's great. But once they close those cage doors, it comes down to the X's and O's. What are we left with, right? And we got our fight analyst here, Dan. Like, when I'm watching, even when Mike was showing some of that B-roll, like, the thing that kind of concerns me about Sean Strickland is his head just doesn't move. And when you have a pinpoint striker like Israel Adesanya, that's trouble, dude. It really is. You cannot give him that kind of opening. He's like R2-D2. Like, it just does not move, and he stands right there. When you look at this fight, Dan, like, X's and O's, what do you see so far early on?
I mean, yeah, there's definitely that as far as, Israel Adesanya's counter striking. He's shown that he can do it against the size parity, which there's going to be some size and reach parity. I guess my only worry, which can also happen when you have the tall fighters going against each other, and one of them likes to counter, at least one party likes to counter. If not, sometimes both. I know Strickland will do steady pressure with the jab. I do worry, even though Strickland, tends to try to pressure and bring it, and Israel Adesanya obviously can do a lot. I more worry about not so much the winner, guys. I worry if we get a stinker of a fight. I mean, we're talking about the building and the excitement level not being there, right? Which is totally fair, by the way. But yeah, I do wonder what happens if we get a stinker of the fight. If you guys have noticed, again, the UFC schedule, whether it's, doing impromptu fights like the bantamweight fight that people are unfairly begging on Corey Sandhagen for, or the impromptu welterweight fight with the guy with the brain bleed. The thing with going with the UFC schedule and making guys fight in not the best conditions, right, or having full camps, you don't always get the best performances. This isn't an anomaly. It's, in fact, a likely backed coincidence here for good reason. So that's my worry.
That's a good point, Dan, because look, I'm not making excuses for Jessica Andrade, but boy, has she kind of looked a little flat in some of her fights. I don't want to take away from her opponent's wins or anything, but man, she's like on 4 fights just this year alone. So yeah, it can happen where a fighter can just be stale on fight night because it's just been too much, too frequently if you're not getting enough of that time off. And the fighters aren't going to turn down a payday if they're okay. And the UFC's leaning on them, they feel like they're part of the team. Like, oh, I'm one of your guys or gals, and so they'll go out there. Luckily, Strickland just doesn't seem to take days off. He's always in shape. So hopefully he can, maximize his strength, which is cardio. We have seen Izzy tire at some of the end of his fights. I should say slow down. They all tire, right? Slow down. And maybe if he just continues pushing it and not taking enough damage, things can get interesting at the end. I want to give a shout out to Vincent Gonzaga. He's tuning in today. And then also West Coast says, sorry, that's the other Sean he's talking about. Let's go to Chris. He says, Sean will have to be defending no, he's still talking about Aljo. There's no way Sean's going to be defending the takedown for 5 minutes. Izzy's not doing that. So anyway, sorry, I'm confusing the two Sean comments there. Why don't I just move on? How about that? Anyway, one last thing. Adesanya did say this. If Strickland talks a lot of trash, he's going to break his jaw. So he's going to make the trash talk interesting from his end.